Hi, welcome to It's So Friday. We're here in Los Angeles on our fourth Friday of the year so far. Can you believe January is almost over? Yeah, Elle was going to give me a prompt to wait a little bit while people joined, and then she told me to give a weather report. So it's sunny here again, no more rain. Today we are going to talk about Pam Dindorf's new collection, Figment. This is a really beautiful collection that features a lot of fun motifs like dragonflies, the tops of parasols, some really great scallops, and a whole lot more. And it's a very different kind of collection, so you're able to mix and match it with the grouping itself, but also incorporate it really seamlessly into your stash that you already have at home. Today we're going to be working on a quilt called Tea Leaves, and just so you can kind of see what we're doing here, we have our sample blocks. In this collection we have 24 different designs, or 6 different designs, 24 different colors, and it comes in a variety of pre-cuts, including our trusty fat quarter bundle, as well as a charm roll, which is 5 inches by the width of fabric, and of course a 10 square. So if you want to make this project today, the first thing you're going to need to do is go on the Robert Kaufman website, follow the link in the profile or in the post above, and download the Tea Leaves quilt. It'll look a lot like this. It'll look exactly like this. That's how you know you're working on the right one. There are 3 different projects for this collection. This is the free one, but the other 2 are also really spectacular. You should definitely take a look. Next on the list of what you're going to need to create these blocks today, you will need your background fabrics, and this quilt uses several different Kona cottons for the backgrounds in a variety of shades of gray. For this example, I just have a pre-cut 2 to the 8.5 inch squares. If you're making the smaller blocks like this, where each block is comprised of 4 smaller squares, you'll be cutting 4.5 inch square blocks. You'll also need the main fabric that you're going to feature, and today we're going to be working with this beautiful green. You will need some fusible web. So actually, okay, I should lead in with the fact that this pattern is actually written for needle turn applique. So if you are comfortable with needle turn applique, you don't actually need the fusible web. But if you don't have the time to create it in needle turn, but you still really love the quilt and want to figure out a way to make this yourself, we're going to show you a different kind of trick using this fusible web. You will also need the pattern templates that are in the last few pages of the pattern here. You'll cut them out. This one is a larger pattern piece, so you actually have to tape it together along the red line, and then you have your big leaf and your little leaf. Okay, so the little leaf creates the smaller size blocks, like what we've done here. You can see the leaf is about the same size. With the big leaves, what we're going to do is, oh, have your ruler too. You'll need your ruler and a pen and a rotary cutter. All right, jumping right in. We're going to lay our fabric right sides up. Oh no, actually, I'm gonna lay my fabric wrong side up, and I'm going to put my fusible just on top. And it's hard to see at this point, so I can see it, but you probably can't see it on camera. Next, take your template and your removable marking pen and trace your template along the outside of your pattern piece. If you're really confident, you could just, well, no, you probably shouldn't. You should not rotary cut around it without marking first. You should always mark first, and you'll just have a very faint line. If you don't mark and you just start rotary cutting, your coworkers say things like, "Get ready to go to the emergency room." So, yes. Don't do that. It makes them very nervous. And the reason that we're cutting this way, I did want my fabric right side up to cut because we're going to sew our pieces together, and so I want them to be the same. And so this is the same template, but just sometimes with user error, like if you accidentally cut one side slightly smaller, then your fusible and your fabric wouldn't be the same size, and it would be kind of a pain in the neck to sew together. This is really hard to see.
You put quite the fabric too.
I did. It's hard to see. So I'm just going to put my template here so that I can kind of tell where my line was. And then you're going to cut around your template. But you're cutting on the line that you've drawn. Okay, so just setting that one aside. And now that we've done this, and I know that my fusible is the same, I'm just gonna do this on the other side so I can see it. Okay. And you're going to need, depending on what you want to make, if you want to make a big quilt or a little quilt, a mini, you only want to make small leaves, you only want to make big leaves, that'll determine how much fabric you need and what you want to cut. But your end goal is to have, not this, so. So I don't know if you can see it, but I accidentally cut my fusible. It doesn't line up quite right, so I had to recut that, which means I need y'all to get me that fusible from the roof over there. In the meantime, I pointed, it's not actually on the roof, but it's pretty high up, and yeah, it's kind of short. I was like, hey, yeah, can you get this? Okay, it's easier if you draw on your fabric, and since that just didn't end well, I'm just gonna make her give me a whole new roll. And so right here we have our Fairfield double-sided fusible web called Stick. I like the Fairfield ones because they have all the different colors, so you know, like each of their different products is wrapped in a different color, so you know you're working with a specific product just based on that color. Let's just cut off a big chunk here. And this isn't necessarily the best fusible web for this particular project because it is a little bit more fine. It's more like a spider web kind of fusible. And so what happens is if you're not careful, it'll tear. But it's really sticky, which makes it great because at least your blocks are definitely going to stick down. Let's see. Oh, they're laughing because I made my dress, but it's like a little big, and so I was paranoid that if I like moved, it would gap. So I had them clip the back of my dress, and they were like, "Don't turn around," and I turned around a little bit. So your goal is to have. I could just show you. It's really impressive. Isn't that impressive? This is real life here. So your goal is to have a piece of fusible web and a piece of fabric that perfectly match. You're going to lay them right on top of each other, and then you're going to sew a 1/4 inch all the way around. I'm just going to do that real quick. And when you get to your corners, be careful because you want to pivot. So stop about a 1/4 inch from the edge and then start again. And now Yael is laughing because I said pivot, and every time I say pivot, she imagines Ross trying to get a couch up a flight of stairs, and she can't handle it. All right. And when you get to the place where you started, you're just going to back stitch a bit. Okay, so now I have one that's sewed around all the edges. It's kind of hard to see. And I'm going to, oh, don't go away. I'm going to repeat that same process again. So now that I cut a bigger piece than I need, I was trying to be frugal, but that didn't work. So I'm going to lay the interfacing down underneath it in a piece that I know is a lot bigger and just lay my pattern piece down. I can mark on my back side of my fabric a little bit easier than on the front. And then I can cut along those lines that I made if I can control my rotary cutter a little bit. Okay, so now I have my second piece, and now I don't need this, so. All right, I'm going to repeat that process again of stitching a 1/4 inch all the way around. You do not need to leave a hole for turning. So start in one spot, go all the way around, and then end in that same spot. And you'll notice as you do this that your interfacing is going to tend to shift a little bit. Just do your best to make sure that you're getting it still in that seam allowance. It's important. Okay. So now that you have your 2 blocks that have interfacing sewed to them, covering the right sides of the fabric, what you're going to do is, using a sharp scissor, you're going to pull with your fingers, not with your scissor, but you're going to pull the 2 layers apart and then clip carefully just through the interfacing. So now you have a hole in the middle of your interfacing. Okay. Then, whoa, carefully not to tear, you're going to clip the edges of the fabric close to your stitch line. Don't cut through your stitch line or it won't work. And then you're going to flip this right sides out. I have to be really careful with this one. Like I said, this interfacing is really fine, so if I'm not careful, it'll tear a little. And I don't have that purple tool that I had last week. Oof. So I'm using a pen. I don't know if you saw that, but it just poked all the way through my interfacing, so. Okay. I'm being much more careful on this side. Poke through again. Okay, it's not the end of the world. We're gonna be okay. And what you're going to have then is this little leaf shape with your seam allowances tucked under in the back. Except this side, which, because it poked through, it's giving me a little bit of sass here, but okay. And you're going to repeat that process with your second leaf. So make sure that you're pulling these layers apart, clipping in the middle, clip with enough room to turn, clip your edges, which I keep almost forgetting to do, and then very carefully turn. And maybe I will try and poke these edges out without the pen, since the pen is doing a number on them on the other leaf. Okay. So, got my little leaf, and it's almost ready to be fused down. So before I fuse it, let's clear all this away. I'm going to work with these pre-cut 8.5 inch squares, and your seam allowance needs to be accounted for, because if you just butt this right up to the edge here, you'll see you have a pretty good chunk of extra space on the top. And also when you sew it together, then you're going to lose your points, and you ideally really want to keep those. So using a square ruler, and I have a 10.5 inch square ruler here, you're going to want to line up one edge of your fabric here so that you have 2 lines that show where where your 1/4 inch points are. So since this is an 8.5 inch square, you want to line your ruler up at the 8 1/4 inch marks. And then once you have that, just use your removable pen to indicate that little corner. So you can see I just drew my corner point in, and that's where I really ideally want the point of my tea leaf to hit. And I'm going to repeat that on the opposite corner. Oh, I already did, so. And I will do that on the second piece of fabric as well. If your tea leaf doesn't line up perfectly, that's okay. If it doesn't bother you, doesn't bother me. Okay. Yeah, you make quilts for yourself, so don't let anybody else bother you. All right, so now actually on these leaves, you have a little bit of wiggle room. They don't quite hit to the corners, and that's okay. So what you're going to do is line them up as centered as you can, and making sure to kind of get these fusible sides as even as you can without having the fusible stick out past your fabric. If your fusible is sticking out past your fabric, you're going to get it all over your iron, and then you'll be sorry. It's not fun to clean up. All right, so then once you have this layered, you're going to take this to your iron and use a generous spray. And I know we all have a lot, well, we don't all. I have a tendency to kind of iron and push. You're just going to want to iron and set. And it takes about 30 seconds. That's what the instructions say. I find that it actually takes less time. It's really, really good and sticky, and it'll stay nicely. Like that wasn't 30 seconds. Plus we're also going to be sewing along these edges, so it's okay if it's not totally stuck down. You just want it, for the most part, really stuck on there. So I'm going to repeat that process with the second tea leaf, just making sure that my fabric isn't tucked under too much further. And
we have a shout out from Amy Meek.
Hi.
She says, it's your red shirt rep. And how is Shelly liking her new machine?
Oh, she loves it. Well, she gets it Saturday, but she's already loving it. So my friend Shelly and I took a class at Road to California. We took the Anita Grossman-Solomon 2-color pineapple class, and we got to sew on the Janome 9400, which is one step up from the 8900 that we're sewing on here. This is the machine I sew on at home, and I totally love it. But the 9400 has an auto foot pedal down, which is really exciting, and an auto pivot feature, which is really great if you're doing something like what we're about to do with sewing, because then you don't even have to lift the foot. It just automatically lifts for you. So, doing this again. And once we've got this good and stuck down, then what we're going to do is we're going to take these, and using a dark color thread or a matching thread, we're going to sew just along the outside edge. So not like a 1/4 inch, but as close to the edge as you can, just to stabilize that that piece that you just appliqued down. So when you start, make sure that you take a couple back stitches, and then just go for it. When you get to a corner, you're going to go ahead and stop, and then turn with your foot, or with your needle down, so that you don't lose your spot and have a weird thread gap. And now that we're at the next corner, we're going to do the same thing. And backstitch a couple times.
Sorry, Allie just commented pivot. He gets me.
Okay, and now we're going to do the exact same thing with this block, and you can see, you can't even really see the stitching. If you look on the back, you can see it kind of. Depends what color thread you use. I guess if you were using like neon orange thread, you'd really be able to see it. So it's a design element. You could decide that you really want to see all that thread. But if you're needle turn appliquing it, you won't have this concern at all, because it'll be invisible anyway. But machine sewing gives you a little bit more freedom. And almost done. Back stitching and thread. And now we have, I'm just clearing that extra little start thread. So now we have 2 leaf blocks that are ready to go and be sewn together. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch these together. And this is just like regular patchwork, you know, blocks right side together, line up your points, sew with a 1/4 inch seam. And I like to back tack at the beginning of my block just so that it doesn't decide to come unpieced later. It's always a pain in the neck. I never remember to do it at the end. And now when you sew your blocks together, you have these 2 leaves. Now there is a little bit of a gap here, but at the end of the block it doesn't really matter, because when you have the whole quilt together, it's not what catches your eye and it's not what you're seeing. You see the whole effect of the leaves all together, creating a secondary design. And we'll show you that right now by attaching this block to the other one I've already made. And so now, using a variety of different grays, this is where you have some options, because you can decide how you want these to go. And so like if you don't like how these look together, you could piece them together like this, or you could decide maybe they go on this side, or maybe you want to make a few more and add them in. I'm going to put them over here, just so. And here again, line your corners up. If you're pinning, you could pin in the center where your points are going to come together. You don't have to, but you can. And then we're going to go ahead and sew those together. All right. seams don't look weird here. On the 9400, that foot auto lifts when you're done sewing. Okay, and now you'll see you have pretty good sized block, and the quilt just continues to build like this. So you could decide that you only want to use the big pieces, or you could only make little ones, or you could do what Pam did and kind of mix and match and have some fun little ones mixed with some big ones. The collection again is Figment. It's by Pam Dindorf, and it's shipping to your shops now. So if you love it, show your shops and make sure that you're able to go pick some up before it's gone. Thanks for joining for Sew Friday.